And how you know it's on is there's the red light there. Microphone will be on. The light's on.
Good evening. I will call the regular meeting of Oak Ridge City Council for April to order. We're glad that you are here tonight and be with us. And this evening, our invocation is going to be led by Pastor Lori Stevens of Oak Ridge Unitarian Universalist Church. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Ayanna Porter, Lindsey Cleveland, and Cooper Williams, Oak Ridge High School seniors and Wildcat basketball players. But before we have the invocation, I'd like for everyone to rise and have a moment of silence in memory of our friends, our colleagues, great Oak Ridgers who have passed away since we last met. Callie Kellison, who we served with on City Council, and then Anderson County Commissioner Teresa Scott. They were friends, they were colleagues, they were great Oak Ridgers, and they were great public servants. So if you join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Pastor.
Good evening. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Lori Stevens from Oak Ridge Unitarian Universalist Church, and I'm really grateful to be here with you all this evening. Good evening to you all as well. I want to invite you all into a moment of prayer or contemplation. Spirit of life and love, we lift up the people of Oak Ridge, of all faiths or none, to the mysterious grace of existence. As our Jewish neighbors honor Passover and our Christian neighbors approach Easter, let us remember the power of these ancient stories, that slavery is against the will of the divine, that nature revolts against unnatural cruelty, that when Jesus could have chosen violence, he brought palm leaves and song instead, and that tyranny and empire will inevitably fall to their knees before the faith in a loving and connected universe, embodied in humble humanity and the actions we choose every day. Let us love all our neighbors, especially the downtrodden, as we endeavor to make this unique place into heaven on earth. May it be so, and amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Steve. This way, yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The proverbial thorn between the two roses.
A tall one.
All right, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Pro Tem Dotson.
Here.
Councilmember Gleason.
Here.
Mayor Gooch.
Here.
Councilmember Hammond.
Here.
Councilmember Hensley.
Here.
Councilmember Hope. Here. Councilmember Smith.
All right, our first item of business, Madam Clerk, are some public recognitions.
Yes, so under public recognitions, we have a recognition of the Oak Ridge High School Wildcat boys and girls basketball teams. They both kind of did a thing a little while back. They went to state, and I think we've got their coaches here and their senior players here. So if they'll come forward right now. Val's beckoning them in. Give us 1 second. There they are. Oh my goodness gracious. Oh, I think he brought all of them. You guys aren't seniors, are you? Well, you know. Well, we're going to try. Yeah, the girls can come up too.
Absolutely.
Are the girls coming up? There they are. Okay.
It's the tallest group of people I've seen.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Oh, yeah.
Right there he is.
Y'all can make 2 rows if you want to. She's told me my head was gonna be in the shot, so I have to move.
We need Outcast and In to move into the second row. Yeah, you can.
I was like, Outcast, what?
Basically this whole end, so we can, that's the next one. And then
Yeah.
squeeze in.
Maybe they'll turn around.
And I think we're good now.
Right? All right, so I can't see Mayor Gooch, but I think I think we're ready for you guys to share with him if you want to share with him. I think I don't know if we want to talk about what all what they achieved this year. I think the council members may know more than I about what we did, but whoever wants to be recognized, I can't see you, so.
Well, we're just glad that the two teams are here. They've had outstanding seasons. It's been many, many years since the boys and women's teams made it to the state tournament. They had success. We're proud of them for their records, proud of the coaches, and they represented us well. They always have, and we expect that, but this year was very special. And we thank you for your hard work, and we hope you'll be back in those that same tournament next year, right, Coach Green? That's right. Okay. Thank you all very much.
One, two, three.
Great job, guys.
And
Yeah.
ladies. So,
Appreciate you.
oh, absolutely. Paige? Paige? Thank you. Love you.
Great job, guys. Great job.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a trophy with it, too.
Yes, it is. All right, Madam Clerk, the next recognition.
We have recognition of members of the Oak Ridge Dance Cats and Dance Team Training Association. They went to national championship and won in several categories. And we have Renee Anderson and Austin Keithley here with some of the team.
All right. Dance Cats.
Hey, guys.
Hey, absolutely.
Right up
And,
here.
Right.
and you can say something if you want to.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Hi. Can everyone hear me?
You go turn around that way.
This way.
Yeah, and yeah. Now they can hear you. Go ahead.
Hi. All right. So I'm Renee Anderson. I'm one of the coaches of ORDA. And this year we have our seniors up in front of us and another coach, Mr. Austin Keithley. We went to nationals and got a national title in hip hop with our senior team, and they also got another national title in POM with the 33 members in that team. Juniors got a national championship in POM as well, but we took 84 dancers all together. We had a great year.
One more time.
We can actually stand up.
We can stand up behind them.
The others were a little tall. I told them all it's just seniors. He brings them all.
Thank you, ladies. Congratulations, all of you, and all your teammates. Yeah, see you again next year.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
We have a proclamation honoring Dr. Faye Martin on her 90th birthday.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. And I know Faye is here, and I'm going to ask Councilwoman Smith to present the proclamation on behalf of the city.
Happy birthday, Faye.
Thank you.
We appreciate you here in Oak Ridge. The need for you to have this proclamation tells your life story in brief. So turn around so we get a picture of the two of us together. Great.
Yeah, that's what playing tennis will do for you.
And Dr. Faye is having a party on Saturday from 4 to 7 at the Old Town Inn, and she wants everybody to come
That's
by
correct.
and say hey. Come on by. We're proud of her.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Next proclamation, Madam Clerk.
A proclamation recognizing Christine Michaels for her service as President CEO of the Oak Ridge Chamber of Commerce.
Move to accept.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. There are none opposed, and I'm going to ask our city manager to present the proclamation from the city to Ms. Michaels.
Thank you. Come up. Mayor, I will tell you, if there were national championships given out for chamber directors, this would be our winner this year. Christine Michaels has had just a huge impact on this community. Great chamber directors do more behind the scenes than they do in front of the scenes. And I want to tell you just one quick story, and that is about the largest economic development project in the state of Tennessee. Oh, she was in, excuse me, she was in Fayetteville for a while, in Tennessee. And that story is this, that when we recruited Orano, there were a number of things that they looked at. One of those things actually was the employment base that would support the project. And Christine went through a ton of research and came up with a list, and I think, was it 26 or 700? Somewhere in that range per year of graduates that we have that are in degrees that would actually benefit that project. And believe it or not, it is things like that that get a project over the finish line. And that is not the only one that she got over the finish line for us. So as she heads to another job, I'm going to tell you we're going to miss her terribly. But I want you to give a round of applause for Christine for all the work that she's done for the community. Thank you. We need to pose.
Yeah, we gotta do the photo. Faye and I have the same birthday.
Thank you.
Next proclamation, Madam Clerk.
A proclamation designating April 2025 as Fair Housing Month.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. And I'm going to ask Mr. Hammond to present the proclamation. Mr. Blasius, I think.
Indeed, my privilege, man. We've had the opportunity and privilege to work on several projects associated with fair housing, so it's a privilege to present this proclamation to you tonight. And thank you for all of the work that you do representing the proclamation that you're about to receive. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Oak Ridge adopted the fair housing ordinance very early on after the 1968 approval of the national law is important and not to be forgotten. Wow.
Next proclamation, Madam Clerk.
We have a proclamation designating April 27th, 2025 as Holocaust Remembrance Day.
moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Is Ms. Bogart here? Yep. Oh, hi, didn't see Ronnie. I'm short. I'm going to ask Mr. Hensley to present the proclamation.
I'd like to say something afterwards.
Absolutely.
Does it matter where we stand?
Anywhere.
Anywhere? All right.
It's my honor to present this, and since I was born in 1945, I'm closer to this than a whole lot of people. It's truly my honor to present it to you.
And I just want to mention, I just want to say a few words because
Just do the mic.
because I just want to talk about how wonderful our community is. I work on this Holocaust Remembrance Program. It takes me months, and we do it every year. We've been doing it now for decades. And you guys show up. The community shows up and helps us remember, and I really appreciate that. Not only that, we have incredible educators in Oak Ridge that are still teaching Holocaust education. Sheila Thornton at the high school. We have teachers at Robertsville. We have retired teachers that are, and including Dale Rosenberg, who are teaching Holocaust education at Oracle, which has just been absolutely amazing. And I just appreciate all the support that we get in the community.
Thank you.
Next proclamation, Madam Clerk.
A proclamation designating May 7th, 2025 as K-25 Uranium Isotopes for Nuclear Fuel Day.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. And here to accept is, yes,
Come on down, Katie.
Katie Johnson.
As we're known as the birthplace of nuclear, and as we move forward and new nuclear becomes ever more prevalent, it goes without saying, some of the significant things that was done at that time really is paid off far into the future, so. Congrats.
Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
Under special reports, we have the City Attorney Evaluation Committee report and accompanying resolution.
Mr. Hensley?
As you all saw, there was a letter in our packet, but
Yeah, turn you.
I'll go through a few of the highlights. The committee noted that the overall ratings were very positive and no significant issues or areas of improvement were identified, and we greatly appreciate Tammy. And there's one comment that I would like to add, though, and that is that relative to the city attorney's strategic plan, there was a discussion among the committee members of the need for the city attorney to work with the planning and development to establish additional zone definitions over and above our current zones because of some of the issues we've seen with waterfront property and preservation. The committee unanimously recommends an approval of 4.88% raise to a base salary of $188,801.60 and a 3-year contract term extension through January 3rd to 2033. We also, because of your much appreciated fine service, unanimously recommend a $1,500 bonus. And there again, we appreciate you greatly, Tammy. And finally, as part of the evaluation process, the committee determined the city has been lacking in a contract compliance with respect to personal internet and cell phone service, which was in your original contract. And the city owes you $6,930 as reimbursement for those obligations that you paid for yourself. And the amount of the stipend would be $260 per month, payable in installments in the same manner as the base salary. And the committee requests that the Personnel Director, Eric Alt, review the city attorney's reimbursement request, and Mr. Alt's reply is included in our packet. So with that, congratulations, and we're glad you're here.
Move for approval.
Second.
I made the motion. Moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? I would just like to echo Charlie's comments from the committee about what a great job Tammy's doing, and we are fortunate to have her. She has to deal with a range of issues that really no other city attorney I know of in the area has to deal with. And we greatly appreciate her, and she is a real asset to our community, and so is the entire legal department. So we appreciate you all. All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? There are none. And the recommendation is approved. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Next item is the consent agenda.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? There are none, and the consent agenda is approved. All right, next item of business, Madam Clerk.
Under public hearings and first reading of ordinances, we have an ordinance to amend ordinance number 2, titled the zoning ordinance of the city of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, by amending the zoning map which is made a part of the ordinance, by changing the zoning district of Roane County Tax Map Parcel 039.064.00 with an address of 350 Powerhouse Road, containing approximately 375 acres from FIR, Federal Industry and Research District, to IND1 Industrial District with a 600-foot buffer zoned as RG1 Residential Open Space and Reserved District as shown on the attached exhibit. And the official public hearing will be held on second reading.
On second reading, so this is first reading tonight.
Yes, sir.
Mayor,
approve.
So, second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Tinsley?
That's all right. I was going to move to do what Johnson did.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Blasius?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a very unusual rezoning request. It is, by law, we have to zone property when it changes from federal government to private ownership. This instance was a case where the property had been leased to the users and eventual owners prior to that conversion, so the activity began under the FIR zoning designation. Since the property changed hands, it's now required that we establish a code for it. I think that everybody's aware that there are many issues sort of swirling around this whole activity. There are codes issues that are on a parallel course, but the task tonight is first reading on establishing the appropriate city zoning district for this property. Ms. Williams from our staff is here, and I've asked her to please just kind of review some of the major issues, and then we're happy to answer questions.
Williams?
Evening. So just to reiterate what Wayne just noted, the item before council this evening, the question before you is to determine an appropriate zoning designation for this site. The current zoning of FIR, which stands for Federal Industry and Research District, needs to be changed because the property is not in federal ownership anymore. You are the city's legislative body, and as such, you can select whichever zoning district you find most appropriate. But if you give me a moment or two, I'll review some of the recommendations and requests that have been made for you and before you and try to take any questions. First, the property owner submitted a rezoning request that the Planning Commission considered and that you also have information about in your packet. The property owner's requested zoning for the site was a 200-foot wide band of IND or Industrial 1 zoning along that Clinch River boundary, as well as additional IND1 zoning in the southeast corner of the site adjacent to what has been called environmentally sensitive areas on the property. And then for the remainder of their site, which is approximately 275 acres, they requested a zoning of IND2. And we have a map of that as well if we need to pull that up at any point. But again, that's IND1 and IND2 zoning. Both are industrial zones, but typically speaking, IND1 is less intensive than IND2. The Planning Commission also made a recommendation. That's what's listed in your ordinance, in the ordinance that was presented to you, and that includes the 200-yard or 600-foot wide RG1 buffer on the Clinch River side, as well as RG1 zoning in that southeast quadrant. So this map on the screen now is the applicant's request that I just mentioned with that IND1 band, and the teal areas labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4 is a requested zoning by the property owner of IND1, and the remaining area IND2. So again, that is the property owner's request. If we want to go back to the ordinance that was open, there we go. So that map on the screen now is what the Planning Commission recommended to you. The area, the buffer there shown in a reddish color and outlined in yellow was a recommended zoning of RG1, with the remainder or balance of the property zoned IND1. And finally, staff made a recommendation to the Planning Commission. That's also in your Planning Commission, or excuse me, in your council packet. And staff's recommendation is a bit more general, but it is that industrial zoning is appropriate for the site based on its location in the East Tennessee Technology Park, the deed restrictions associated with the property and its past uses and potential contamination. But staff also recognizes that a difference between this site and the rest of the East Tennessee Technology Park is that it abuts across the river a very large residential development. And so staff has also recommended taking some measure to protect the adjacent residential property with some sort of less intensive buffer zoning district, whether that be IND1 district, potentially even an O2 office district to limit the uses in a buffer area adjacent to residential. And again, just to reiterate, you are city council, you can also choose a fourth option, something else. I'll make one last statement, and that'll be it for me and to answering questions. If council does choose to zone this property IND1 or IND2, I want to make the point that the current use of the property, the storage and processing of the decommissioned windmill blades, will also require approval from the city's Board of Zoning Appeals, or BZA. The BZA is empowered by state law to add conditions to the use, such as vegetative buffers or fencing. Those are up to that board, to the BZA, but that is another element of this site, if it's zoned industrial, that will be required going forward. I can try to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. Dotson?
Yeah, I've got several questions. Thank you, Ms. Williams, for presenting that and all your work with the Planning Commission. With regard to this, can we go back to the initial request from Carbon Rivers? Yeah. So the 1, 2, can you tell me what the width of those boundaries are?
So the boundary on the Clinch River side is 200 feet wide. That's what's proposed. You can see there's also a gap there for the barge terminal that's on the property, on that band, that would also be zone 92. Areas 3 and 4, don't obviously have a width, standard width, but all 4 of those areas together, 1, 2, 3, and 4, totals about 100 acres.
Okay.
And then the sort of football shape labeled number 5 in the middle is the property that's still under DOE ownership and is not included in this rezoning.
Is parcel 5, is that the wetlands area?
Yes, that's how it's been referred to.
Okay. And could you go to the next overview, the Planning Commission's request, please? Okay. So in the area in red, that was Planning Commission's request to do that R2?
RG1.
RG1. That's residential, right?
There are other uses permitted outside of residential, but it's a residential open space and reserve district.
Okay.
RG1.
And the width of that was how many?
It is 600 feet wide. That is that red area,
Okay.
but it encompasses everything outlined in yellow on the screen. So it also goes around that sort of football-shaped DOE-owned property.
Okay. And my next question, I don't know if you can lay your hands on it, but a good definition of the O2 zoning district, could you please tell us what that is?
So the O2 district is just really a general office district. It doesn't have a definition or a description in our ordinance, but it is generally speaking an office district.
And just conjecture here, if you were looking at this band that we were looking at for residential, if we decided to go O2, that would be office buildings, is that correct?
Yes, it would. Any of the permitted uses in O2 could be allowed there.
Okay. And that in essence might serve as a buffer.
Yes, a less intensive zone buffer.
Okay, okay. I think that's all the questions I have at this point. Thank you.
Mr. Hensley?
Yeah, for the purpose of discussion, I'd like to put a motion on the floor that that the council accept the planning commission's recommendation for the rezoning. And do I need a second, or can I make comments?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, I'd like to make some comments.
That's what's on the floor.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause that's what's in your
Then I want
packet.
to back it up by adding some comments.
Okay.
I got out the old comprehensive plan, which is still in effect. And if you look at policy P12, the city will support the maintenance of neighborhood quality. If you look at economic development plan, encourage growth which capitalizes on the assets of Oak Ridge while at the same time preserving and enhancing the quality of life found in the community. And under land use development, while protecting established neighborhoods and environmental quality. And it goes on that we want to protect the existing neighborhood, which is directly across the river. One of them, policy L20, the city will continue to protect and preserve the functional and aesthetic features of its floodplains, drainage ways, and river shorelines. The legacy inherited from the federal government is considered to be a mixed blessing. Beyond the limitations related to location, topography, and land availability, the single most significant deterrent to attaching greater self-sufficiency and reducing anxiety about the future of Oak Ridge is essentially the need to protect our neighborhood quality as established in our old comprehensive plan, which I think those are good policies that will not likely continue into the new one, I would hope. That's it.
Ms. Smith?
Yes, I appreciate Ms. Williams reviewing some of the zoning districts related to this. I'd appreciate it if you could provide a definition or the description of the Industrial 1 and Industrial 2 districts. I think they both have a narrative explaining their purpose, as well as some details.
Are you asking for?
Yeah, if you could present that.
To be fair, I honestly thought I had included that as an attachment. It did go to the Planning Commission. So the description of the IND1 industrial district is that it is a light industrial district established to provide areas in which the principal use of land is for light manufacturing and assembly plants, storage, warehousing, wholesaling, and distribution. Enterprises engaged in the manufacturing, compounding, assembly, packaging, treatment, or fabrication of materials and products from processed or previously manufactured materials, but not the processing of raw materials. Light industry is capable of operation in such a manner as to control the external effects of the manufacturing process, such as smoke, noise, soot, dirt, vibration, odor, etc. So that is the IND1 district. The IND2 district, which again is typically a higher intensity zone, industrial zone, says the IND2 general industrial district is established to provide areas in which the principal use of land is for processing, manufacturing, assembling, fabrication, and for warehousing. The IND2 district provides for enterprises in which goods are generally mass-produced from raw materials on a large scale through use of an assembly line or similar process, usually for sale to wholesalers or other industrial or manufacturing uses. Medium industry produces moderate external effects such as smoke, noise, soot, dirt, vibration, odor, etc. These uses do not depend primarily on frequent personal visits of customers or clients, but usually require good accessibility to major street, rail, water, or air transportation routes. Such uses have some adverse effects on surrounding properties and are not normally associated with nor compatible with residential, institutional, or retail commercial uses.
Thank you. Question about applying these. Is there, what's the wording in the ordinance about the application or the requirement for special exception by the Board of Zoning Appeals?
So I would describe, I think this use could be described in terms of the language of our ordinance as a solid waste transfer station or recycling center. And those uses, both in IND1 and IND2, require BZA approval.
Okay. Does the ordinance say anything about what the BZA needs to consider? Or it
So
just says
there's-
it requires their approval?
There's only one explicit requirement, which is that the use has to be surrounded by an 8-foot fence. But then state law empowers, and our zoning ordinance empowers the BZA generally to establish conditions related to public health, welfare, and safety, your general statements.
Okay. And when we're talking about the shoreline area, I believe there's some sort of a flood easement by TVA on some part of the shoreline. Do I believe that correctly?
I believe, yes, that there are already
So-
some requirements about distance that has to be maintained from the shoreline for the industrial user.
Okay.
Regardless
So
of
there
what we
is some requirement there that would apply regardless of the zoning on
I
this
believe
property. So, and then I have an off-the-wall question, too.
My favorite.
We've got that 38-acre ash disposal area that TVA, or the DOE is holding on to. Do we think they're going to clean that up? Is that part of their intention?
I don't know that I can answer that. I can
yeah.
try to find an answer for you
Okay.
before second
But
reading.
I'm wondering whether it wouldn't be appropriate for the city to consider zoning that, or providing some zoning for that district, just in case they decide to turn it over in the future. Because right now, regardless of what we do on this property, it's going to have that little hole in the middle of it. And I'm just wondering whether it would be legally possible to provide an anticipatory zoning for that in conjunction with whatever you do with the rest of the property here. So,
One option to accomplish that, Ms. Smith, is that, we are working on the comprehensive plan, and right now that area doesn't have designation on the land use map. But as a part of it, we could be specific about that, which would then control future zoning. And at the point of, because we can't zone it since it's still in federal land, so really all we're doing is making a policy kind of statement that this is what is appropriate if and when it ever became transferred. And so the plan would accomplish that also.
okay, because I was thinking that it would be appropriate to have some thoughts on that at the same time that we're looking for the rest of this property. So that's what I have for now. I may have something else. I don't know that anyone else is prepared to speak. So,
Mr. Hope?
Jennifer, Tammy, you may have to help on a couple of questions I have. And one of the things you were talking about was from TVA is the 750 rule, which is a floodplain type deal. You're not allowed to build below that 750 space. So between what recommendations we have and what the Planning Commission has brought forth, I've got an issue with the RG1 buffer zone, just because we know that there will never be any type of residential development of any sort along this area. I know they basically said it was for the open space, but if I'm understanding correctly, if we make a recommendation and we go forward with either ING1 or ING2, it'll go in front of BZA, and BZA then can put a designated buffer area around the waterfront, making sure that we protect the wetlands and the areas around that and the surrounding area along the riverbank.
Yes,
Is that correct?
yes, they can
Okay.
do that.
So my question would be and regardless of who owns the property now or who may own the property in the future, we have to zone the property according to what we think is right for the city, not for what's necessarily right for any particular ownership of that property, correct?
I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, so my question is, with the location and with the proximity to the rest of Heritage Site, it makes sense to me that it would be an ING1 designation, knowing that BZA would come involved with trying to set parameters for a buffer zone to work within that. I mean, when you were describing the differences between IND1 and IND2, it sounds like the IND2 is for a lighter application of an industrial use versus the more intense use of IND two.
Yes, IND two is more intense,
Okay,
typically speaking. The only clarification I'll make is that the BZA only comes into play if a current or future user is attempting to do a use that requires their approval. Other uses that could be there in the future would be allowed by right. It wouldn't necessarily have to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals.
right. So the current user of the property would have to go in front of a BZA, and then the BZA has the ability to set certain parameters and or restrictions on what they can do and can't do with certain parts of the property.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. I have no further questions right now.
Mr. Dodson?
So I'm going to come back to the original motion and staff recommendation because that's what we motioned and seconded. With regards to this, and hopefully y'all can hear, regards to this, it looks to me like the staff recommendation was a less intense zoning district on the property's western boundary. This could be IND 1 as the applicant request, or an even less intensive district such as O2 office district. So there's not really a clear direction with regards to that, if you want to call it that boundary to the west of this. So council could come in here and we can say, okay, we want to set some parameters with regard to that and make that something that we feel would be a good buffer between something that would be across the river, if you will, a housing district, and the organization of the business conducting the business that they are currently doing. I do know BZA has a say in this after we take it up. But again, this is one option that we have currently. Now, I do know you look up at Planning Commission's recommendation. Their recommendation, and it was a vote of 5-1 that we didn't have a full docket that night, was that it be zoned an RG1 district. Again, with some of council members' questions with regard to that, residential district, I just don't feel like is applicable at this area for that particular place as far as zoning. An O2 district, a business district, would serve the same purpose, but it wouldn't be a residential district, and it would give us a good buffer between housing development as well as Carbon Rivers doing their business as they have been doing. So I would say, for me, my vote would be tonight would be looking more closely at the O2 district rather than an IND 1 district for that area, because it would serve the same purpose, more or less, as Planning Commission voted to do, but it also would give us a say, if you will, or an opinion about how we would like to move forward. And it's really important to make sure we have a buffer there. Now, it can go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and anything can happen there. We would like to think, you know, they will uphold some of the ideals that we brought forth tonight, but you just never know on something like that. So for me, for my vote, I would say, looking at staff's recommendations, I would lean more towards the O2 district rather than the IND 1 district in this case. Thank you.
Mr. Hensley?
Yeah, just to go back a little bit in history about the debate in the Planning Commission meeting. Our zoning ordinance right now is woefully limited in protecting waterfront or conservation areas. And so after much discussion, RG1 was the best one we could use for a buffer. It's sure that's a residential, but which is worse, O2 or residential RG1 with 4.2 acre lots required. In my opinion, we picked the only and best solution for protecting the neighborhood across the river. And as an added factor, as I said in the attorney evaluation, because of this woeful limitation in our zoning ordinance, we need to look forward that we've got 20,000 acres of FIR that we need to be ready. But that's why we picked RG1, because it was the best one available to protect the neighborhoods across the river.
Ms. Smith?
Yeah, I want to speak against the idea of O1, Office 1 for this district, or O2, whichever number we were talking about there, O2. And that relates to one of the topics that that was raised in some of the material that the applicant has provided to the city, has to do with the DOE analysis of health and safety issues on the property for release of the land. And their analysis was related to the idea of releasing this land for what they call industrial end use. And that's not to say industrial zoning so much as it is to say that a level of protection that's appropriate for industrial users, industrial workers on the site. And the sense was that they determined that this was safe for release as an industrial site or for passive recreation. And the situation there is that industrial workers are generally prepared to deal with a lot more hazards than, say, the typical office worker. And people who use a site recreationally are visiting it only intermittently and not getting exposed to any significant degree. So that use was not necessarily trying to define a zoning use so much as it was indicating the nature of the activity that was appropriate from a safety point of view. And I think it would be irresponsible to suggest that this is an appropriate site for some of the things in the office zone, like offices and hotels and so forth. That invites activity that would not be appropriate on sites that have the kinds of issues this land has. So I would stay away from that particular zone.
Mr. Hope?
Just a quick question, Jennifer. If it was to move forward with an O2 type zone, would that also be applicable to go in front of the BZA?
So the O2 zone would not permit the current use of the property for the storage and processing of windmill blades. So essentially in that buffer, that use would not be allowed to take place.
So what I'm asking though is, would the BZA come involved if, say, a buffer area of O2 was sought and approved? They would have no say-so within that buffer area?
Correct.
Okay.
They don't have any authority to approve a use that's not listed for their approval.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Ryder, do you have any comments?
Well, I think, oh, that was loud. Well, I think what, what you are trying to do, obviously, tonight is zone the property for the use that the zoning designation that you believe is most appropriate for this property, keeping in mind where the property is located and what the property used to be used for. And it's hard to separate out in your mind what is currently on the property, but we are not looking at zoning it for a particular business, for a particular property owner. You are looking at placing a proper zoning designation on it for what City Council feels is the most appropriate zoning designation. And DOE's deed restrictions are not controlling on City Council as far as your zone designation. It is obviously useful information for you to know what DOE feels is an appropriate use from a safety standpoint for this property. Absolutely agree. But it's not controlling on a zone designation, if that sort of makes sense. And I know that that's hard to separate out. And I understand where you're going, on looking at something different than the RG1. And absolutely where you're coming from on not having it be O2. So, and it's hard because I can't really give you a recommendation on what zone to put on it. I can just give you a recommendation on what your role is as far as City Council in this area, and that is to give it what you believe is the most appropriate zone designation for the property, not for the property owner, but for the property. And the property owner knows, even their request for the IND1 and IND2, they know that that has to go to BZA for approval, and BZA would have to put parameters on it. And I know there was the comment about that you would hope that BZA would put parameters on it. I do think, you've placed people in that role for the Board of Zoning Appeals. Do need to put some trust in them to take their role seriously that they have, should it be a matter that does go before BZA. And I do feel that if it was something that, if you zone it and it goes to BZA for a special exception, that is something where they would have to put parameters. Because if you don't put parameters on that type of use, then you're essentially saying that that use should be a permitted use by right. And it's not a permitted use by right. So there should be some parameters put in place if that use is going to be allowed in that zone.
Mr. Johnson?
So I'm going to circle back around again, because again, I always look at staff recommendation first. I just have to. I mean, you are the experts. You are doing the boots on the ground work, and we really value your opinion. We really do. And with regard to this, I'm looking at staff's recommendations, and you know, part of that what was brought to Planning Commission was the IND 1 and IND 2. But then we have a staff recommendation here of either the IND 1, which could be industrial inside buildings, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Is that?
There would be outdoor storage of materials permitted in IND 1.
And see, that's where I have a little trouble with that, outdoor storage with materials. Or O2 district, which is office buildings. This is the part where I'm trying to get my head around. I really value the opinion of our other planning commissioners and the fact that they brought up RG1, but when you see residential associated with that, I think most of us know that there's not going to be residential in that area. And again, I think we could use other zones in the city of Oak Ridge that would help us in this particular arena. But when I look at staff recommendations, I keep going back to what you have said here. Staff recommendation is a less intense zoning district on the property's western boundary, and we're talking about when the map came up, we're looking at that area. And I think both Planning Commission and staff see the need for doing something in that area that protects the integrity and protects the people who are living across the river, as well as making sure that we, and I have had conversations with staff, we are zoning this area, okay? We're not zoning the preserve, we're not zoning anything else. We're zoning this area. We're trying to do the best we can for whoever's there now and whoever will be there in the future. And I don't see residential being that at this point. But I'm really glad that I heard O2 come up, because for me it seemed like, if you looked at the definition, this takes care of a lot of what we were looking for, that buffer, as well as maintaining the integrity of what this area is probably always going to be used for. You can never, you can never forecast that, but more than likely it is. I just don't see residential being in that area. I wish we had a different type of zone, but O2 sounded very appealing to me when I read the definition and heard you talk about it. I'm still, that's the way I'm leaning. I think it's a good compromise between what Planning Commission has an intent for, what I have an intent for, and what you, as staff, recommended for this particular area. So I'm looking at all those pieces and parts, and they all seem to kind of come together on an O2 district at this point. Not so much an IND 1 or anything like that, because we go back in time if we do that. Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards IND 1 for this situation, and some of my reasoning is that we've always thought that this. I don't know how far it always goes, but in my memory, we've always thought of this area as a future industrial area for the city, and I don't see it as a place that would have things like retail business or that kind of activity, because it's so hard to get to it. It's not a location where people are going to be dropping in and doing things. And the IND 1 zone has the feature of the expectation that it basically impacts to the neighbors are going to be minimized relative to other kinds of industrial use. And that's been true of most of our IND1 zones in this city. There are places that have uses that hopefully are not annoying to the neighbors, although I know some of them are. The reason that we have that special provision for the for recycling businesses and solid waste transfer is that those are inherently likely to cause problems for the neighbors. They're not simple, straightforward uses. They sound good, but there's a lot of things that can go wrong in a recycling operation or in dealing with any kind of waste material. So that's a reason for having special concern about providing protections. So since we have an area that we've always thought of as industrial, that's right across the river from a residential area, I think we need to stick with the industrial zone there, but with the understanding that we keep an industrial zone that will minimize the experience of the industry that people have on the other side of the river. I kind of like the idea of using RG1 as a buffer, and I'd say, yes, it says residential in it, but the deed restrictions would prevent residential. And so we don't need to worry about the fact that that word is a major part of the zone. We're not saying that it's suitable for people to live on, but it is a zone that provides for conservation and recreational activities, public uses such as basically privately owned parks would be covered by RG1. I'm not sure about the practicality of having a strip of RG1 along the river, and I think staff can advise on how that would work. But I think that industrial 1 is the right direction to go for the bulk of this property. So that's my thoughts.
Mr. Hensley, then Mr. Gleason.
Yeah, could you put up the diagram that shows the applicant's request? One of my major concerns is area 2, 3, and 4. I don't know why they're asking for IND1 on that, because 2 and 4 in particular are a wetland wildlife area that goes almost all the way to the Galahar Bridge there on the lower right. Can you explain what's your opinion of that? How do we keep that out of the rezoning to protect it if we don't use something like RG1?
The BZA would also have the authority to not allow the use in those areas. That is one option. As to the applicant's thinking, I can't speak to that, but.
What concerns me about that is we're just passing the buck. I think right here is where we need to make a decision.
Mr. Gleason?
Yeah, just a quick point of clarification on Councilman Hensley's last point. So currently, there is no city designated zone for 2, 3, and 4, correct?
The entire property is currently zoned FIR.
FIR,
which is,
right.
yes.
So we have to pick something for that space. Okay. All right. That sounds good. Thank you. Obviously, RG1 is the only designation we have that allows for the open space. There's no other open space zone.
Correct. The city has a green belt zone, but it is specific to publicly owned property, not privately owned property.
So we foot stomped that one all the way to death. And then the IND1 versus IND2, the cutout, the barge cutout area, what's that? Since that's not covered in that owner request, is the assumption it's IND2 to that space?
Correct, because a barge terminal isn't allowed use in an IND2 zone.
Okay. And just to double check on the scope of what we're being required to discuss this evening, is it the totality of the IND1 and 2 and applicability of both those zones, or is it only the IND1 designation on the perimeter space?
So the designation that would be selected would be for this entire 375-acre parcel. But it could be multiple zones or a single zone.
Okay,
Just
so
not
not to add that complexity to the table, but we spend a lot of time talking about the barrier, right? We've got to talk about the totality of that space. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hope?
So we'll go back to another question. BZA has no involvement with an RG1 zone.
Correct. The use would just, in terms of the current use, it just is not permitted in that zone.
The only time we're going to have any type of BZA authority would be either under an ID1 and/or ID 2?
Yes, for the current use.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson?
So a lot of lively discussion about this topic, and I do appreciate you helping us through this. You know that O2 Office District, I think it would work in this area, but I think some of the people in our room here, as well as our planning commissioners, would like to preserve this area as a natural area, and rightly so. I mean, if we can look past residential in this area, I don't think that's part of what we have to consider when we're talking about you mentioned this earlier, Ms. Rackard, the deed or the, what it's deeded for. Is that correct?
The deed restrictions?
Yeah, deed restrictions.
Right, the deed restrictions are not controlling on your decision to zone.
Okay. So thank you for that information. So with regard to that, if we're not constrained by that R meaning residential, but it's more of the complete definition, then I think that may have been the way we needed to drop back to. Again, do I feel like office more clearly defines this particular area? Yes, I do, but there's more that's happening out there than an office district, if you will. But I certainly don't want to do IND 1. I would like to give clear direction, as Councilman Hensley says, let's try not to pass the buck and go in that direction. And again, trying to support our planning commissioners, because it was a 5-to-1 vote with regard to that. So if you look past the R in residential, but you look at the total definition, I think this might be a better solution to that particular dilemma. Thank you.
Question, I noticed that Chairman Whitson of the Planning Commission was not at the meeting, but submitted a letter that I understand was read to the commissioners.
It was.
In which he recommended a zoning of UB2. You want to just summarize what UB2 is and the difference between it and the other two that we've been talking about here for the last 30 minutes?
So UB2 is one of the city's commercial districts, and that's the best description of it, I would say. It's a general commercial district that allows a variety of commercial uses. And Chairman Whitson did submit a letter to the commission with that as his recommendation. The commission had a motion on the floor to recommend UB2, but that motion failed.
All right.
I'd like to ask Councilman Dodson for clarification of your preference. You're suggesting that the bulk of the property be O2 and the conservation area, things that we've described, conservation areas be RG1, or what's your current thinking?
I think your verbiage is good. I would like to go back to the Planning Commission's recommendation on the map, please. Can we do that? Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, this represents the intent of our Municipal Planning Commission's recommendation for the RG1 area, meaning the red area, if you will. Is that correct?
Correct, the red buffer and also the entirety of that yellow outlined boundary.
Okay, and the entirety of this is how many acres?
375.
I'm gonna ask you for a guess, I know. So the red area, how many acres is that?
38. Oh, no.
No.
I do not have that. The 200-foot wide buffer requested by the property owner is about, and the area surrounding the football is about 100, but so the Planning Commission's recommendation would be higher.
So good. So given all the discussion that we've had, thank you again, Ms. Williams, for all that. And the intent of Planning Commission, and after lengthy conversation here on the dais, and I want to make sure I do this parliamentary procedure correctly, Mayor Gooch, I would withdraw my motion to support staff's recommendation and substitute planning commission's recommendation, if I may do so.
You can withdraw it if the person who
Second.
seconded.
I withdraw it.
Did I second it? I withdraw my second.
I don't think we actually had a motion and a second on staff recommendation. We had
did.
conversation. Beth doesn't have it recorded.
I believe the motion on the floor is the planning commission's
Yeah, it's
recommendation.
the
Floor
way
is
the
the
ordinance
planning
is
commission.
written, and you moved, it was moved and seconded to bring that ordinance, that is the planning commission's recommendation.
Which is the
Yeah.
RG1 buffer with the
That's laid
remainder
out
of the
in the
property
Well, if
zoned
that's the
IND1.
case,
Yeah.
then I will stay with that.
Yes.
And I will stay with that as a second.
Right, you made a motion and a second when the item was first read, to place it on the floor for discussion. And then there was conversation about going back and forth, and then you almost made a motion to put something on the floor, and that's when we said, well, what is before you was the planning commission recommendation. And then you made conversation about supporting something different, but I don't have any notation of it being a motion or a second, and neither does Beth.
Well, the maker of the motion supporting the
Yeah.
planning commission's recommendation, I go on record as doing that, and I would imagine
Yes, second, agrees.
So what we have is the IND1, sort of in the middle, and then you have that large buffer area of RG1, which is a 600-foot width buffer, correct? Is that how
that's correct.
Planning
Thank you, Ms.
Commission
Thacker.
did that?
Appreciate it.
Which
You
is a
also-
higher buffer than staff.
Correct. There is also an item in the packet with showing a 200, 400, and 600-foot wide buffer. If you would like to pull that up, that is another
What does this one show?
600.
600?
The one titled additional zoning exhibit right below where your mouse is. The second to last item. Yes.
So, Ms. Williams, does this take a separate motion?
This is just for illustrative purposes purely to show what the width of a 200, 400, or 600 foot buffer could look like. It also has 10-foot contour lines on it.
Well, if it was the intent of planning commission to go with the 600,
Yes, that is what was
then
recommended by planning commission.
that's where I am going to stay.
And that is how the ordinance was written, because that was what Planning Commission did. So that's what we put in the packet, is the Planning Commission recommendation.
One,
Mr. Hensley?
yeah, one comment, and this comes from a conversation I had with Mike McGill's partner in the railroad. And I see Mr. McGill standing back there. Does the little cutout for the barge access, Mr. Fee said that there was no easement through there for Carbon River's access. Is that correct?
Mr. McGill, state your name and address, please.
Thank you, sir. Mike McGill, 135 Center Park Lane. Mr. Hensley, I don't know, I can't say for certain if that is the fact. What I do know is there, on upriver, there is an active barge terminal there that has been used in the last several
Okay,
years.
I apologize for putting you on the spot there.
That's fine.
Mr. Hope?
Yeah, it's whether we go with a 200-foot buffer, 400, 600, if you designate that either Office 2 or RG1, you have no authority, and BZA will have no income or no input into this if something comes up, if there's anything disputed about it under those designations. And I understand the intent of what you're trying to do. I think the buffer is needed. I certainly want to make sure that Wayne?
I just wanted to clarify that in terms of the recycling use that has been requested, it would only be allowed under IND1 and IND2 and would have to go to BZA. That use is not allowed in RG1 or O2, so it would be moot.
Okay.
the need for it to go to BZA.
But we
would-
have no control on that property once it's designated that property. They would never, if there was any infraction in that property under that zone, that would not go through the proper channels of going through BZA.
Well, any activity would only go to BZA if it was not allowed as a use by right, if it was allowed as a use that had to be approved by BZA in addition to the basis zoning. So the uses in RG1 or O2 wouldn't allow the recycling center, and wouldn't have to, there'd be no reason to go to BZA because it's just not allowed. Only the uses that are allowed by right or with additional BZA approval in those two could be considered, if whichever one it was.
Okay. Nothing else right now.
All right, other questions? Comments? All right, now let's state the parliamentary situation that we have.
So there was a motion and a second
Right.
to approve the ordinance that was put in your agenda packet, which and outlines the planning commission's recommendation, which was the I&D 1 with a 600-foot buffer zoned as RG1 residential open space and reserve district. There was a motion and a second on that, and that's what's under consideration at this time.
All right, and what is approved tonight is on, if anything's approved tonight, is on first reading. And we'll be back for second reading next month. Ms. Smith?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from members of the public if we're, okay.
Yeah, I'm just
Okay,
trying to
just wanted to make sure we were.
Yes, ma'am, I'm
we weren't gonna
going there
forget them.
next.
Thank you.
I'm going there next. Since we've heard 45 minutes of questions by council, is there a representative of the applicant here? Yes, sir. Would you like to address council? If you'd state your name and address, please.
Yes, Sarah Johnson, 11907 Kingston Pike, Suite 201, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37934. I represent Powerhouse Land LLC and Carbon Rivers Incorporated. I do want to clarify a couple things. The barge that is...
You've got 3 minutes.
I understand. The barge that is located there is in use. That is currently being used. We do agree that the land is not appropriate for any type of residential use due to the explicit restrictions by the DOE. There's been extensive studies, and I've presented you guys with a packet of all the studies and all the DOE restrictions that are in place. If the land is zoned RG1, that will damage the use of the land for future uses because the land is restricted from dig restrictions. There is a 10-foot dig restriction on the entirety of the property. Additionally, in the 600-foot buffer that Planning Commission has recommended be RG1, there is a K770 scrapyard located in that area. There's also rail lines through that area as well, so any type of residential use would not be appropriate there. Are there any questions I can answer for the council?
And you've outlined that in your letter that you've provided to us.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, and there's plenty of information, and Ms. Rackard has electronic copies of all those documents. A little easier to see because there's very big plans there, and there's lots of information with the easements and all of that on the Alta survey that you can see.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the audience wishing to address council? I'll go on my left here. Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Kelly Thompson. I live at 136 Fallberry Street in Oak Ridge. That's in the preserve. I'm on the Environmental Quality Advisory Board as well as the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board, but I'm here for myself.
Yes, ma'am.
I've been to every planning commission meeting and workshop except for one since the rezoning signs went up for Carbon Rivers in front of the wetlands. As a member of EQAB, I attended a joint meeting with the Roane County Environmental Board where TDEC discussed Carbon Rivers and the issues associated with its operation from TDEC's perspective. After every single meeting, my concerns and fears about Carbon Rivers just went up. They weren't resolved in my mind at all. This is really a big mess that you all have been forced to try to resolve. And my biggest concern is protecting the wetlands, the wildlife, and the Clinch River. There is no way from that map, if you zone it industrial 1, or if you zone it office OE O2, I don't think the Board of VZA, whatever y'all are talking about, would have any say at all if somebody wanted to come in there and destroy the wetlands and build a building, office building, whatever. Carbon Rivers has repeatedly said at all of the meetings that the wetlands are useless to them and they want to protect them. I provided them with information to do a conservation easement. I don't know if that's done, but there's ways to protect those wetlands. And RG1 is the best way for you all to protect those wetlands because it's my understanding RG1 is the same zoning for Hall Ridge. There's a deed restriction in place on this land that does not allow residences. I don't think that Carbon Rivers can say residential use is not appropriate. I don't think anybody thinks there would ever be homes built on that area. But any other designation besides RG1 is going to allow those wetlands to be destroyed. There is one, I think somebody mentioned the Greenway designation, but that's only available for property that's owned by the city. So my most important thing, if you look at that map, I think it's like zones 3 and 4 on Carbon Rivers map are the wetlands. The 5 area that DOE still owns, that's also part of the wetlands. I think it's where like the fly ash is buried. All of that area cannot be disturbed because of environmental issues associated with it, and RG1 protects it.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Mahaffey, 113 Faubury Street, Oak Ridge. First, I just want to start out and say Oak Ridge is lucky to have Ronnie Shapiro Bogard in the Jewish community. I didn't get a chance to say that while she was here, but I've known her since, and we're just fortunate. As far as this, I've spoken about this before, and I'll do so again. But I don't know if you all know what we have at the preserve. It really is a preserve. We're very protective, and I won't give out a whole lot of other information, but we have our own eagle set, Liberty and Justice. They have eaglets right now. We're very protective. Just yesterday, I photographed a Eurasian tree sparrow. They're very rare. That's at the preserve. I would let your mind go back to the Kingston Steam Plant, Asheville, a few years ago. Nobody wanted that to happen, right? Do we want a Love Canal in Oak Ridge? And I have nothing against the people that own it. I wasn't involved in that, and I'm sorry for them. But you can't put your leading, largest development in Oak Ridge next to something that, what happens if they go out of business? What happens to all the windmill parts? Whatever you do, I'm not smart enough to figure out all the industrial things, so I'm not going to throw letters and numbers out. All I ask is that you protect Oak Ridge. We've got enough waste in Oak Ridge already. We don't need any more. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address council? Mr. Cole-Claser?
Doug Colclasure, 103 Monticello Road. My point is not particularly addressing your resolution directly, but as the Carbon Rivers attorney pointed out, this property has deed restrictions. If you've all read the deed, I presume you have, there are 44 restrictions and stipulations. The idea that this has great potential for widespread economic growth is limited by the deeds, and that deed stays with the property as I understand it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Gleason?
Yeah, sorry, sir. Would you mind popping up the planning commission map real quick? Sorry, just to kind of get everybody situated. The question I have here is our ability to zone as we see fit this parcel. I think may have fallen into somewhat of a trap of looking at that entire buffer zone as one specific area, right? We've heard concerns with certain portions of that buffer, right, in that lower right-hand corner, what the applicant referred to as parcels, I think, 2, 3, 4. Theoretically, right, you can carve that off and zone that one way, right? You have the current industrial space, right, that's there that can be zoned another way, and then you have the hook on the top, that broader buffer all the way moving around from the west to the north that can be zoned as well, right? So, not to really make this worse, but essentially, you know, what I don't feel prepared with is a good analysis of alternatives that really have dove into what can be done, what makes sense to be done, what establishes precedent being done around FIR parcels. And I hate to do this, but I'd like to evaluate the idea of calling a special meeting specifically as it relates to this, to dive into this in detail, more so than we would do in even a work session. That's it.
So, restate your motion?
I don't know if it was officially a motion. I'm a terrible parliamentarian, but I'm the new guy up here.
Want me to try?
We can try. So I'd like to move that we defer the topic to a special meeting specific to the analysis of alternatives for zoning for this parcel, and to hold that before the next council meeting.
Just for clarification in your motion, are you wanting to have the special meeting before we take the initial vote on first reading?
Yes, sir.
I think you need to say that in your motion.
Apologies. Yeah, so let me amend that motion to add in prior to voting on the first reading. I'd like to request a special meeting specific to this parcel and an analysis of alternatives with zones.
Second.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded. Discussion.
My mic's on.
Mr. Hensley, yes, sir.
This is the first reading. We've got between now and the second reading to do what Mr. Gleason's talking about. To look at the details and discuss it at the second reading. I don't think we should delay this. I think we would move forward with, and then look at the second reading as when we would discuss changes.
Mr. Dodson.
I would agree with Councilman Hensley. Been a lot of discussion with regard to this from Planning Commission as well as City Council, listening to our citizens and also talking with our staff. I think particularly since this is first reading, I think we need to do a vote tonight and then consider alternatives. In fact, I was going to come before our staff and ask if there's any way we can look at maybe the creation of a alternate zone that would better describe what we're looking for, if you will. But I think it's important for us to vote tonight, and then we can do things between this vote and our final vote.
Mr. Hammond?
I see I saw the look on your face. I was like, oh, no, she got something to say. So, yeah, when your legal counsel looks
All right.
like that at you,
So I
You
got
always
two.
listen to your lawyers, so
So
go
I got
ahead.
two things. So for your comment about, if we could create a zone that sort of addresses this, there's no time to create one between first and second reading just because of the time frame it takes to do an ordinance. So when we're doing a zone, not only does it take time to create that and evaluate that, but it does go to Planning Commission first, then it comes to City Council for 2 readings. And while that can be expedited, there is still a time frame that has to take place. And so it wouldn't be able to take place between first and second reading. But if I may offer the thought of a compromise between the two thoughts here. So if there is a desire to go ahead and take action on first reading, but also a desire to evaluate alternatives, then I would recommend that you evaluate alternatives in between first and second reading, not at second reading. And the reason being, we have not done an official public hearing for this ordinance because there was an anticipation that there would be a lot of discussion about what the zone designation should be. And we wanted to do that legal notice, knowing more what City Council's idea was. So I would not want to legal notice what you approve on first reading, knowing that you also want to evaluate potential alternatives that you might want to then move on the floor for second reading. I would rather, if you're looking at truly evaluating options, that we do that at its own meeting prior to, which I think is what you're talking about, but wasn't necessarily what you said. You were talking about maybe doing those alternatives at second reading.
I think we need to vote tonight.
I know.
Yeah.
Yes. But if you vote tonight, then I would say evaluate alternatives prior to second reading being scheduled, not at that same meeting.
That works.
Okay? And then that way we can sort of get a feel for what you might be doing.
All right, so there's a motion on the floor. You want to withdraw your motion?
Yes, sir, I'll withdraw.
Okay, and I'll agree to that. Mr. Hammond?
Oh, yeah, I'm good. Now that we've done that, there's no need for what I was going to talk about, which was timing and
Right.
sort of what that looks like. But I'm good with approving tonight with the understanding that we'll come together and look at it between first and second.
All right, any other questions? Any other comments? Looking to my left, looking to my right. All right, the motion, one last time, Madam Clerk, just so everybody's clear.
The motion is to approve the ordinance that would rezone the property from Federal Industry and Research District to IND1 Industrial District with a 600-foot buffer zoned as RG1 Residential, Open Space, and Reserve District as shown on the exhibit, and it's the Planning Commission, to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation.
All right, Ms. Smith, do you have?
Yeah, I have a concern about that language because it doesn't explain the part at the southeast corner of the property, or the lower right corner on the map. I think that's southeast, but I'm not sure. So, but the 600-foot buffer zone is only the red part, but the recommendation included, I believe I was at that commission meeting, and I believe that the recommendation included everything that's in the yellow bounded area.
That's correct.
Not just the 600-foot buffer. So I think that if this is our resolution, we need to clarify that those are the areas included, and not just say 600 feet, because that's not what was addressed.
Yeah,
And I have a concern that 600 feet is too much. But that was an arbitrary number, and I think it's unnecessary. But that's the second item. I agree with RG1 for the southeastern part, but I'm concerned about whether 600 feet is right for the rest.
Okay, so that's two different things we got going on there. All right, so for the ordinance, so we've got reference to the buffer, and we've got reference to the attached exhibit. So what you're saying is we're sort of missing, if you'll scroll down to my picture, we are missing what's in the yellow.
Yeah.
That's not in the orangish red. Okay, and are those labeled, are those, yeah, it's on the bottom to show that those are RG1, but are those like areas 3 and 4, or?
They are mentioned
that-
as 3 and 4 in the written portion of the recommendation that you have.
Okay, so if somebody can make a motion to amend the ordinance on the floor, to also include, and I'll clean it up before we get to second reading, but to also include the RG1 designation, so in addition to the buffer, but also to say, and areas designated 3 and 4, as shown on the attachment.
Mr. Ackert, since I was the maker of the motion, can I just go ahead and include that?
No. No, because that's not what's in the packet. So technically, we have to amend what's on the floor to include it because we're having to amend the ordinance. So we would amend the ordinance to include those to make sure that that's clear. And then you would vote on that amendment just to add them into the language that does not actually approve the ordinance. And then we can address your second issue, which is the 600-foot distance.
I move that we add those add those
Okay.
areas in the southern part of the property that are not in
Okay.
the 600-foot.
I apologize for missing those
So-
for you.
Second.
Okay.
Moved
So that's a
and
motion
seconded.
and a second to add those two that are
To
in the
amend.
yellow highlight that are not in the orange, to add those into the RG1 designation as requested by Planning Commission. And so then that would be, if you don't have any other discussion on that part, would be a vote to just amend that.
Okay, so
So we can
before we
take-
vote,
yeah.
we
That's an
clear on that?
amendment.
Are there any questions?
That is
Any
not,
comments?
right,
The motion before us is to amend as stated by the city attorney.
yes.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? There are none.
All right.
All
And
right,
then.
now we're back on the motion as amended.
Now you're back on the motion as amended, but then you had Councilwoman Smith had your second comment.
Yeah, I have a concern, and it's kind of a vague concern,
Yeah.
that 600 feet is too wide.
It's wide.
For that part of it.
Okay.
So that's a second, somewhat unrelated issue.
Right. So now if that,
I'm not going to propose a specific amendment because I
Okay.
don't know what
but
would be
maybe
more
something
appropriate.
that we build in if you're going to do alternative discussions.
All right, that's fine.
Yes.
Mr. Hope, did you want to make a comment? Okay, all right. Okay. All right, so we're on the board. The motion is to approve as amended.
As amended, which is Planning Commission's
Have that one.
And maybe, yeah, it's, sometimes you have to push it down before it can work, so that's good.
Gotcha.
I mean, for me, yes. I mean,
I'll let him know.
Like I said, I have the bigger podium than the rollers.
Thank you. So, I went back and I watched that committee meeting, and the 2.5 million, so that was an earmark from the Inland Intervention Fund. Yeah, that's what it says. Yeah, 2.5 million from the intervention fund. So tomorrow it goes to full committee, so it sounds like they at least listened on Friday. It's like it's supposed to be, you know, and the 500,000, 500 to half a million for the Raw Innovation Institute, just from the budget. It's not gonna be so, anyway, we'll see, like I said, we just the process, but they've got a lot of today, so. Yeah. Live another day. Yeah.
All this stuff that we got to do. Special needs.
Yeah. Well, I went further with Chase. I said, please help us so much. He goes to town, goes to UTEP. It's just training. Yeah. She's
All right, everyone. Let's find our seats here. All right, next item, Madam Clerk.
An ordinance abandoning a portion of right-of-way of Badger Avenue upon certain conditions being met by the adjacent property owner.
Move to accept.
Second.
Moved and seconded, but Mr. Heeman?
Yes, sir, I'm going to call on Mr. Blasius for this one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Excuse me.
Oh.
No, ma'am, I would never do that. I wouldn't have called for a vote with you out of the room. All right.
This is first reading of an ordinance to, for the city to abandon a section of Badger Avenue being brought by the applicant R&R Enterprises, who were co-developers of Main Street Lofts and have recently purchased ORAU property on the other side of Badger. For purposes of their financing, they need to incorporate them into one lot, and that's the reason for the request. The applicant is here, and we're happy to answer questions.
All right. Thank you.
And
Madam
may I,
Clerk.
Yeah, and if I might just add one thing. So normally when the city abandons right-of-way and the city owns the underlying fee of the land, which we do in this case, we split it down the middle and we divide it between the adjacent property owners. In this case, you have R&R Enterprises on one side and technically the IDB on the other side because the apartments have a pilot. And the IDB, that's why you've got a letter from the IDB asking that you transfer that full ownership over to R&R. And if you notice in your ordinance, there is a blank space because we published the packet prior to the special meeting of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission met last week on Thursday, and they voted in favor of the abandonment. So I want to ask you again, before you actually do your vote on this item, if someone would amend this ordinance on the floor to replace that blank space with the word in favor of. So I have in favor / against because we were going to put one of those in there. Thank
Second.
you.
Moved and seconded. Any conversation about that? All right, the motion on the floor is to amend the resolution to include the Oak Ridge Municipal Planning Commission recommended in favor of abandonment of this portion of roadway. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed?
You're not opposed, right?
No, okay.
That was a good way to say it, though.
All right.
Keep us on our toes.
Mayor Gooch.
So,
Can I ask-
so that's the ordinance as amended. Thank you very
All right,
much.
Mr. Hensley, let's keep moving.
Okay. I'd like to add some icing to the cake here in that Mr. Colcloser wrote a letter about preserving some of the old trees along Badger if possible, and I talked to the applicant, and they said that would add value to their property, and they plan to do it.
Thank you.
Mayor Gooch, I failed to say that that the roadway would remain open to the public as it is as a public street, and that the new owners would be responsible for maintenance of that property going forward in perpetuity.
All right. All right, any other questions? This is first reading. All right.
Just a question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
What's the status of the agreement to ensure that that the street's going to be maintained for access? And do we have a draft agreement?
Not yet. If city council did move forward with that and we knew that that was something that you were supportive of, then we would move forward with doing the agreement.
Okay, thanks.
All right. All right, any other questions, comments? Seeing none, the motion is to approve on first reading. We're on the board. 7 ayes, no nays, and it is approved on first reading. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Under final adoption of ordinances, you have an ordinance to amend ordinance number 2, titled The Zoning Ordinance of the City of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, by amending the following sections. Section 14.07, titled Signs for Residential Districts. Section 14.09, titled Signs for Education Districts. Section 14.10, titled Signs for Office Institutional Districts, Section 14.11 titled Signs for Neighborhood Business Districts, Section 14.12 titled Signs for Community Business Districts, and Sections 14.14 titled Signs for Business, Park, and General Industrial Districts, all for the purpose of eliminating the height restrictions for wall signs, except that the top of the wall sign can be no higher than the building's apparent roof line or cornice, and to allow internal direct illumination of wall signs in all districts except residential ones.
Move to accept.
And there is a public hearing is required on this reading.
All right.
We didn't do it last.
Need a motion to open the public hearing.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. Are there any members in the audience wishing to address council in the public meeting? Public hearing, rather, sorry. Seeing none, any motion to close?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are back on the motion. Seconded, Ms. Smith?
Yeah, what's the motivation for this particular amendment to the ordinance?
This arose when an issue was brought to BZA. The Y-12 Credit Union has rebranded, new logo and that sort of thing, and wanted to replace their old sign with a new one. and the old sign was approved prior to the adoption of the existing ordinance. Under the new ordinance, it was allowed to stay, but under the new ordinance, the new sign couldn't be erected at the same height. So they came to BZA asking for an allowance. BZA thought it was reasonable and wanted to approve it. I'm paraphrasing that conversation, but under the ordinance, there was no opportunity to do so, and they asked us to ask Planning Commission to take a look at the text, and from that grew this amendment that was approved by Planning Commission to allow signs to be at the height of the building, as well as some changes to illumination when they do not front residential property.
Well, I'm kind of interested in hearing that because I know there was concern in the Woodland neighborhood of people who were afraid they were going to be seeing a brighter sign than Y12 had previously, and that it would be shining into their residential neighborhood, although they're across the road from the Y12 Credit Union, but they're still facing the sign.
The sign is outward facing, and it is said the way that the text amendment is written, when it is facing or in a residential district, the illumination is not allowed.
So how is the facing a residential district defined?
Literally by
How is
street
that
front. In this
determined?
case, it's facing South Illinois with the neighborhood to its back.
Okay, so the particular sign faces South Illinois and does not face the Woodland neighborhood?
Correct.
Okay, so an analysis was done, basically the angle of the sign and so forth, to ensure that it wasn't going to bother the neighbors?
Yes, it points away from the neighborhood.
Okay. I hope that's true, because I did hear concerns from that neighborhood. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for staff or comments? Seeing none, the motion is to approve on second reading. We're on the board. Ayes 7, no nays, and it is approved on second reading. Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
An ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances, City of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Title 10, titled Animal Control, Chapter 1, titled General Provisions, Section 10-105, titled Registration of Dogs and Cats, Subsection 1, to establish the annual registration fee for dogs and cats will be set by city policy.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, the motion's approved. We're on the board. Ayes 7, no nays, and it is approved on second reading. Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
An ordinance accepting certain infrastructure for Section H, Phase 1, Deerberry Lane at the preserve at Clinch River, formerly Rarity Ridge, for perpetual maintenance by the city.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions for staff?
He's gonna go fast now.
Mr. Ridge, do you have anything? Do you have anything?
No, we've got 3 acceptances. They're all parts of Rarity, small acceptances. The punch lists have all been completed, and we have warranty bonds on all of them.
And that's right. And so your comments are applicable to the next 2 items also. Is that correct?
You are correct, all 3
right,
of
the
them.
train's moving, so let's keep going. All right, we're on the board. The motion is to approve. Ayes 7, no nays. We're now on item D.
I'm coming, hold on. An ordinance accepting certain infrastructure for Section L, Phase 2, Boysenberry Drive at the preserve at Clinch River, formerly Rarity Ridge, for perpetual maintenance by the city.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Any comments or questions for staff? Seeing none, we're on the board.
Okay, you gotta, just, because it doesn't, it takes a minute to reset. Okay, which one are we on? Phase 2, okay. There you go.
Mr. Hensley.
Charlie?
Ayes 7, no nays, and it is approved on second reading.
An ordinance accepting certain infrastructure for Section L, Phases 3 through 6, townhouse along Broadberry at the preserve at Clinch River, formerly Rarity Ridge, for perpetual maintenance by the city.
Move to accept. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions for staff? Any comments? Seeing none, motion is to approve. We're on the board. Seven ayes, no nays, and it is approved.
An ordinance abandoning a portion of right-of-way of Renovare Boulevard at the request of the Industrial Development Board of the City of Oak Ridge to improve the marketability of Development Area Lot 5 in Horizon Center Industrial Park, and there is a substitute ordinance to be brought forward.
Moved and seconded. The substitute.
Yes, there is a substitute in your packet. And so, again, we published the agenda before Planning Commission met on Thursday. So while I put the substitute in there, which has a lot of information added in there about the Planning Commission action, I am going to need you to actually amend the substitute. So I'm going to need someone to make a motion to amend and place the substitute on the floor. And with that, to also add, I know I'm slowing down the train, to add in the phrase "in favor of," because Planning Commission did recommend in favor of the abandonment. So if you want to just, there you go. So moved. In a second. And then
Once we approve that.
And then once you approve that, you will just do one more vote, and then that would actually do the abandonment of the roadway.
All right, all those in favor of the amendment indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. We are now back on.
You are now on the substitute ordinance as amended, which is to abandon that portion of Renovar, which is the exact same item that you had before. It just includes the language about Planning Commission's action of being in favor of that abandonment.
That's included.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. We're on the board. Ayes 7, no nays, and the resolution is approved on second reading. Next item, Madam Clerk.
An ordinance to amend ordinance number 27-85 titled "A Personnel Plan for Employees of the City of Oak Ridge, Tennessee," as amended by deleting section 7.2.c titled "Residency Policy" and substituting therefore a new section 7.2.c of the same title to define which employees are required to reside in the city limits.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Heeman or Mr. Alt?
I don't have anything else to add from our previous meeting unless you would like me to go over it.
Not unless there's questions. All right. Seeing none, you are relieved of that chore this evening. That's right. Yeah. We're on the board. Ayes 7, no nays, and it is amended. It is approved. Thank you.
All right, under resolutions, we have a resolution rescinding Resolution 2-9-07 and approving a new city policy, E-200, setting forth a process for naming a city-owned facility or portion thereof after distinguished individuals who have made a significant and substantial contribution to the Oak Ridge community or to the greater area, resulting in national or international renown.
Move to approve. Second. Moved and seconded. Are there any questions for staff on this resolution?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yeah, we had a great discussion of this earlier, but since that time, it's occurred to me that some cities have things named for corporations and stuff based on donations that were made. We've never had that we haven't done that sort of situation here. I wondered whether that's something we might need to create an additional policy for, or whether we've got one someplace that I'm not aware of. But just sort of an interesting thing that I thought of.
Yes, we can certainly look at that if you want to go ahead.
Okay.
If you're interested in
Yeah.
passing the policy and moving forward, we can take a look at that and bring back an amendment if that's, we can talk about it in work session, however you want to handle it.
Okay, no
that-
worries. Thank you.
All right. Then I suggest that we we do that. The motion is to approve, and we're on the board. Ayes 7, no nays, and the resolution is approved. Now, Madam Clerk, item B.
A resolution authorizing the naming of the Grand Ballroom at the Oak Ridge Conference Center after Edwina Crowe.
Move to approve. Moved and seconded. As you all know, we talked about this at the last work session. I think I've had nothing but positive comments about this proposed action, and I hope that all of you have had the same experience. I'll be happy to try to respond to any questions if there are any, or we can direct them to staff. But I think as has been noted, and as early as, or as late as 2 or 3 days ago, on April the 9th, the article by Ms. Weaver outlining again the tremendous contributions that Edwina Crowe has made over a lifetime, and what she meant to everybody that came in contact with her. So Mr. Dotson and then Mr. Hope.
Yeah, my only request, Mayor Gooch, is that we, during this time, give an opportunity for anybody who has sat through this long meeting to be able to speak on Edwina Crowe's behalf, because we really appreciate you being here this evening.
You don't have to do that, Mr. Dotson. That would have been done, but that's okay. Mr. Hope.
Yeah, it's just, Edwina is a remarkable woman. She was a remarkable woman. This is the least the city can do to honor her. I fully support it.
Thank you. Are there members in the audience wishing to comment on the resolution? I would note that Charles Crowe is here, and I think members and daughter. Okay, Rebecca. And we are so glad that you're here. And again, we appreciate your patience, as Mr. Dotson said. But before we call you up, are there any other members of the audience that wish to address council on this matter? Yes, ma'am. You state your name and address, please.
Frida Boyd, 153 Hatley Street, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, 37830. On behalf of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, I am the president of Xi Iota Omega chapter, of which Mrs. Crowe has been a staunch member and very active, and we are very much appreciative of this recognition of her. She indeed was a pillar in the community. We certainly will miss her, and personally myself, I've known her for over 40 years. I've seen her in action. I've seen her touch the community, and especially the young people. She's reached out and done so much for our community as well as for our children. So this is very befitting, and I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address council? Mr. Hammond.
Just wanted to, a quick one, just to express my personal appreciation. Both my daughters went through several of the programs that she championed, and so I want to personally just say thank you, and we consider it a privilege to do the very least that we can do. I also want to acknowledge the mayor and just say thank you for championing this opportunity. When we sat here a little bit ago, and we were talking about, actually we were working on, I believe it was the Scarborough 85 Conversations and Project, and you noted that recognition was long overdue. And so to see you recognize Sister Edwina Crowe in due time and in due season, quickly and expeditiously, without hesitation, and to give such a significant honor. Oftentimes these things come through and you're relegated to, some side honor, but the significant honor and the expediency and the passion in which you brought this forth. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that. So I thank the family, but I also want to very personally thank you for your leadership in this space as well.
My privilege. All right, the motion is to approve, and we're on the board.
Thank not only city council, but the Oak Ridge community. All of you that know knew Edwina know that she loved Oak Ridge just about as much as she loved us. And the one thing, I would say, I reiterate what Councilman Hammond said, she was a champion for the youth of the community, all youth. I think they coined the phrase, leave no child behind. That was Edwina's phrase. It didn't matter who the kid was. So thank you, and the family really appreciates it.
I echo what my dad has said. We thank you very much. Thank you for this community and what you all were to my mom. The city of Oak Ridge meant a lot to her. It means a lot to my brother and I. I'm sorry he couldn't be here this evening. He's in the Nashville area, so it's a little bit more for him to get here. But we greatly appreciate this as a family and as a community. Everything that my dad has said and that you all have said is true about my mom. Her footsteps are huge to fill. I'm not even going to try. But hopefully the legacy that she has left behind will leave an even greater impact on the city of Oak Ridge and the nation as a whole. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Just real quick, Charles and Rebecca, just really quick. I was one of those young men once that got several life lessons from Miss Edwina Crowe, and they stick with me to this day. So thank you very much.
Next item of business, Madam.
Where are we? A resolution waiving competitive bids and authorizing the city to contract with Brabston Incorporated, Knoxville, Tennessee, to repair the sewer force main along the Bethel Valley Road ramp in an amount not to exceed $195,000.
This is a repair of a sewer force main that just blew out and found its way to the surface. We dug it out with the assumption that we were going to just fix a break in the pipe, and as we started chasing it, the pipe was so brittle that everything we touched just started falling apart. We've got it Band-Aided very poorly right now, but we do have it contained. But at this point, we just don't feel like we can fix it. We feel like that if we keep chasing it, it's going to get worse. So what we have decided to do is replace a section of it, reroute it so that we don't have to dig under that ramp, and then take it downstream to an existing manhole that will divert the flow to the pump station down on Pump House Road.
Seeing none, the motion is to approve, and we're on the board. Seven ayes, no nays, and it is approved.
A resolution to amend the contract with FM Sylvan Incorporated, Knoxville, Tennessee, for as-needed HVAC services to increase the compensation amount by $100,000 for a new not-to-exceed amount of $150,000.
Moved and seconded.
Yes, so far with Sylvan, we have spent $35,000 due to catastrophic repairs for HVAC systems around the city. And we had another catastrophic repair that has to be done. The chiller at the Civic Center a drive alone, just the part, is $41,000. So that's going to put us, with repair, installing, and programming it, the cost of it will be 50 grand altogether. That'll put us with Sylvan at $95,000, and we still have a few more months to go with more repairs needed. So I'm requesting that we increase this to the $150,000 to cover.
Any questions or comments? Sounds like the only course of action to me. All right, we're on the board. Thank you.
Welcome.
Ayes 7, no nays, and the resolution is approved. Next resolution, Madam Clerk.
A resolution authorizing the city to enter into a memorandum of understanding to plan, develop, maintain, and promote the area of the Clinch River between Norris Dam and Mountain Hill Dam as a recreational water trail to be known as the Pellissippi Blue Way.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Hedrick.
Yes, as noted, for a number of years now, a group of individuals and organizations have been working together to develop a Pellissippi Blue Way, which would be the water-based equivalent of a greenway trail that would follow the Clinch River from Norris Dam down to Melton Hill Dam. This is an effort to recognize the importance and significance of the Clinch River to not only the community of Oak Ridge, but all of our neighboring communities. So a large group has gotten together, including municipalities adjacent to the river, state organizations, the National Park Service, and a lot of community support from different groups, including the Advocates for Oak Ridge Reservation and Tennessee Citizens for Wilderness Planning. This MOU is an attempt to organize that and tighten up that group so that we can continue to move forward and develop this important recreational and natural asset for the entire community along the river.
Thank you, Mr. Hedrick. Ms. Smith?
Yeah, I'd like to acknowledge that I've been intensively involved in this effort, and I'm going to abstain on the vote, so I'm not voting for my own, I can't be accused of voting for my own project. And I'd like to introduce Allison Bullock from the National Park Service, who has been our consultant on this and has done an amazing job herding cats to keep us focused on the objectives we have. And unfortunately, this is her last week with the federal government for reasons we can all guess. But we really appreciate her and glad that she's living in Anderson County so she can support this project as a volunteer. But Allison is majorly responsible for making this happen. Thank you.
Mr. Hensley?
Yeah, I wanted to comment that relative to some of the conversations we've had about FIR property, this Blue Way borders probably, I don't know how many, more than 10 miles of waterfront that's inside the city limits that's currently zoned FIR. So we need to be aware of that and address it as we go forward with our comprehensive plan.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we're on the board. The motion is to approve. Six ayes, no nays, and one abstention, and it is approved. Next item of business, I believe, are appearance of citizens. Citizens shall be permitted to address City Council about matters that have not been on the formal agenda tonight. Any citizen wishing to do so shall raise your hand, proceed to the public lectern, and after recognition, state your name and address and the purpose of your appearance before council. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes and shall relate to matters of city business. They shall generally not result in a formal response or action at the time of the presentation, because in most cases, neither council nor staff will be prepared to respond effectively. However, I may answer the question, direct the city manager to do so, or the city manager may be requested to work with the citizen to effect resolution of the matter brought forward. Statements that are purely political in nature will not be allowed, such as campaign speeches or announcements of candidacy for office, nor will announcements of a civic or social event that is unrelated to city business. Are there any members of the audience wishing to address council? Yes, sir. If you come forward and give us your name and address.
Hi, David Ramba, 138 Groves Park Boulevard East, just up the road in Groves Park Commons. Been before the Planning Commission twice with a question and want to repeat that to the City Council as that's what's been recommended at this time. The question for you all is who owns and maintains the roads in the Groves Park Commons subdivision? To give you just a little history, this subdivision was started in 2008. The bulk of the homes were built between 2008 and 2010, with a handful sprinkled up through 2016. 2018, that developer went bankrupt, and we've had a couple of developers since then putting in some houses. So we've asked this question of the Planning Commission, and the city has dug in on this a little bit, which we're very thankful for. Just want to make sure to recognize that. We've been told a couple things. We've been told by one of the city attorneys that state law provides one avenue for the city to take ownership of roads, which is what you all voted on a couple times tonight. However, that doesn't seem to make sense. Why would the city take out a bond, or why would the developer be required to take out a bond with the city if there's only one way for the city to take the roads? That kind of defeats the purpose of the bond. We've been told by another city employee that the city does not view these as private roads, which in my mind leaves one option. I'd like to point out, lastly, that on the 2010 plat that was recorded, there was a $225,000 bond taken out against the developer. That bond was never called in, and the city does not seem to have great records of the bond. We don't really know where it went. I'm working with a couple of your folks on an open records request that I still need to get in there and dig through, so hopefully we'll learn some things there. So the follow-up question to that is, why was the bond allowed to expire? Where did the bonds go? And then one more note on those plats. There is a note on the 2010 plat, excuse me, for uncompleted improvements must be completed by the developer within 1 year of approval of the plat. So come March of 2011, the developer should have been required, the city should have executed that bond and required the developer to finish those roads. And then finally, there is a note on that plat that says that all, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
The city has perpetual maintenance responsibility of the asphalt within the 12-foot wide alleyways in the development. So that to me says that there are some roads which the city should currently be responsible for based on that recorded plat. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Delisa Simpson Schubert, 129 Center Park Lane. I think that Mr. Hensley and Mr. Dotson are aware of the situation, and they've been very open as far as hearing what we have to say on the issue of Groves Park. Specifically, I had a house that I had listed there. I'm a realtor and have been for a number of years. During all of my efforts to try to sell this property, I received an enormous amount of feedback from people that came to visit the property. Groves Park needs their final top coat. They deserve that. Which at that point, when I started noticing that all of these people were noticing, I reached out to the city and I asked, why is there no top coat? It has been over 15 years, and now the situation is horrible roads. Many of the areas of the roads in Groves Park are very difficult to drive. The more I ask questions, the more questions there are. Specifically, why was a bond required in 2010 of $225,000? And what was the end result of that bond? I did an open records request. I've seen a lot of records, a lot of bonds, a lot of bond extensions. It is my experience in reading through the open records that when a developer cannot finish the property, the top coat and the infrastructure in 1 year, that 60 days beforehand, the city notifies that developer that they needed to either get an extension or move forward with completing the roads. Where are the records for this bond? Yes, that developer did go under in 2018. Simple math tells us there should be 8 years in between the time they started the development and the time that they went bankrupt. There should be 7 to 8 bonds and extensions to be viewed by the public. I have seen 0 after more than 20 hours of review. We'd like that road finished. The residents deserve that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Michael Martin. I live at 102 Curie Lane in Groves Park. Mr. Dodson, Mr. Hensley, good to see you again. Most of what was said previously covers what I wanted to say, but just something to think about was we asked at the last zoning commission meeting, if I'm saying that correctly, which was last Thursday, what's going to be the cost to do this? Regardless if the city's going to have to do it, the current developer, or how this is going to be figured out. And there was an estimate made by a person on the council that said $100,000 per mile. I walk that neighborhood every day. I think end of the world, there's 2 miles in there, and there's probably less. So, but let's use 2 miles. That's $200,000 according to that gentleman's estimate. Just in the past 6 years, we averaged 43 homeowners in that neighborhood. 43 homeowners paying $3,000 a year in property taxes. Times 6 years is $774,000. This little bitty neighborhood is paid in property taxes, but we can't get our roads paved. The base layer was put in 17 years ago with a shelf life of 1 to 2 years. It's been 17 years, and again, just using that 6-year example I'm referencing tonight, we've paid $774,000 for a road that will cost somewhere between, let's just say, $100,000 to $200,000. There was a lot of comments tonight on previous topics about doing what's right for Oak Ridge and what's right for the community. The residents are doing their part. We're paying our taxes. We're living here. We're working here. We're doing the right thing. We hope y'all side with us and do the right thing and get our roads paved. It's been a long time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
One more thing. I don't mean to interrupt. Earlier tonight, there was a Dr. Faye Martin that was recognized for earlier this evening. I'm originally from Chattanooga, Tennessee. My parents still live there. My mother's name is Faye Martin. And when I heard there was a recognition for Faye Martin, I had to do a double take. So she's left, Dr. Martin, but anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment here?
Mr. Hensley?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Let's see if there's any other. Mr. Colclair, on this point or something else?
It's not on the agenda. 103 Monticello Road, Oak Ridge, Tennessee. The last thing I want is to impede any of our economic development progress that's encouraging going on right now, especially out at Horizon Center. In 1996, Horizon Center was proposed for industrial development, and an environmental assessment was done in place of a formal EIS because there wasn't time for an EIS. That assessment assured that the natural areas would be protected out there. We have in place in the city regulations to protect those. This is the natural areas that we're talking about protecting out there. I'll let the members here tonight see what the natural areas look like out at Horizon Center. When I go out and look at the project going on now, this is what's going on. We have regulation to prevent this. I reminded our Healthy Waters program for 2 months. The next time it rains in Oak Ridge, and it does rain in Oak Ridge, this will be the outcome. A 3-foot high piece of fabric to protect the natural area. The Healthy Waters people tell me a sediment basin is required at phase 1 of grading. And this is what happened when it rained. I think we can have economic development and respect and protect our environment at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colclair. Mr. Hensley?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the Groves Park Commons road issue. Is there anything we can do to break this logjam? I guess I'm asking that question to both our city attorney and our city manager.
So, Groves Park, we have looked at that. The city of Oak Ridge has not accepted those roadways. So they are not accepted for perpetual maintenance. They are private streets. And you did have, the item earlier today where, that's the process for the acceptance of the roads. It goes to Planning Commission first, then it comes to City Council for the ordinance. So those haven't gone through that process. There is a provision in the Tennessee Constitution about the use of public funds, and the public funds are to be used for the public in general, not for a private purpose. So not for the purpose of the private subdivision. It's not that we don't understand the situation out there, but at this point, they're not city streets for the city to be paving them for the roadway.
As we talked about in the planning commission, we're at an impasse, basically. The current, I don't know if he's the current developer or not, but he was there talking about how he does not own the roads. And so it sounds to me like the only way to resolve this is in a court case.
Right.
And a judge says who owns the road.
Right, I cannot tell you who owns the road out there. I don't know if the developer purchased the road when they purchased the properties out there, or if those properties are owned by the homeowners. All I know is that the city has not accepted them.
Sure, I
So-
understand. I'm just concerned that we've
And I
got-
can't, and I can't give them legal advice on how to determine ownership of those. But they could make a determination of ownership, they just would have to contact someone other than
concern
my
is-
office.
My concern is, as the last fellow talked, is we got residents paying property taxes for living in Oak Ridge, and the roads are decrepit. I don't, it's an impasse that I think there ought to be some solution for.
Mr. Dodson? I'm sorry, Ms. Smith.
Yeah, I'm puzzled by the history here, that I don't recall this being proposed as a private subdivision. I recall that it was basically a new subdivision in the city. It wasn't going to be gated. It was going to have, have streets. And there were some unusual planning considerations. The way the streets were designed and stuff was sort of a new way of laying out a subdivision, which had some interesting merit. But I don't understand how it, I would think we'd have records that would show what the intention was when this was approved. And I'm also concerned about the procedure related to the bonds, because every time I read a planning commission agenda, it's full of reports on the status of bonds. And so I'm under the impression that planning commission keeps track of an awful lot of bonds, sometimes over extended periods. So I'm wanting to understand how this fell through the cracks.
Right, I do understand that. That's not a question that I can give you an answer
Right.
to this evening, because I don't know the answer to that question. It's not a bond that the legal department holds, and I can't tell you. We can continue, because it's not that we don't continue to look into that issue for those homeowners and see if there is something that we can find somewhere that helps answer that question. We do continually look. It's not that we've completely given up on that question that they have asked. We have given them the information that we know to date on that. Jennifer Williams has gone out and spoken with the homeowners. Possibly, is Jennifer, the developers? Okay, if you want to, yeah. So Jennifer can come up here and let you know what communication she has had with them. So it predates Jennifer. It's, we're seeing what we can find.
But do we have a procedure that's supposed to help keep track of these things? So,
Yeah, we do. A couple comments to that, I suppose, in terms of that bond that was adopted in 2010. The Planning Commission did renew that bond annually for a number of years in their minutes. But at some point, it lapsed, and the city does not hold it anymore, as far as I'm aware. We have changed our procedures since that time to require any new bonds to renew annually without Planning Commission action, so that happens automatically. The tracking is also done differently, primarily through the legal department, as opposed to being dispersed but the planning commission does still keep track of bonds. And I have not met with the homeowners specifically. I've had email correspondence, and we sort of addressed the group at the planning commission meeting last week, but I have not met with residents specifically.
Mr. Johnson?
You know, it seems as we're at an impasse, part of that's driven by a lack of information on if this is city-owned property or if this is a private-owned property, and I think that's the first place to start. The other thing is, there's some conjecture made tonight about what would it cost us if we went in and we made this right. I think that's one thing that we definitely can do, is we could go in and appraise how much it would cost to fix this problem we have in that particular development. So I would like to direct staff, if we could do that, so we have a hard number that if council decided or desired to move forward with this, we have somewhere where to start. And I think that's at least some progress that we're making with regards to how much it would be to make this happen. While that's going on, I think there's going to have to be a deep dive into trying to find out who in fact owns this property and where we would go from there. Thank you.
Mr. Hope?
Mr. Heeman, do you have something to add before I talk?
I was just going to say that the streets are privately owned right now. I mean, we have determined that. So the city has not accepted those. The final coat usually has to be put on, as you heard the processes tonight. Final coat is put on, and then the city, they're brought forth through the planning commission and then the council for acceptance. And so these are still private streets, and that is kind of the dilemma should council decide to do something is, you know, they're still private streets and you're not allowed to spend money on private streets. And they have not been accepted by us. So it would require changes to your ordinance related to accepting streets that were not completed, which would be kind of a messy situation for us in the future should that can of worms be open.
Several questions. So one, I personally went out and drove these roads. The main roads are without top coat. The alleyways are, the substructure's deteriorated. I mean, we have citizens driving across dirt. There's not a road. It's just dirt or gravel. So we're talking about substructure being repaired as well as top coats being put on the main thoroughfares through this neighborhood. We've had people living there now for 15-plus years, whether existing from the original developer and or bought homes in there since then or had homes built since then. That's the thing that really disturbs me, is that we have no idea who the developer is or what their responsibilities are. Is a developer a home builder, or is a home builder a developer? That's another issue that's, I think, that's arisen in this neighborhood, is that we have home builders building homes, maybe a few lots at a time, but not necessarily been, quote, named the developer. Is there public record? Is there record within our city that shows who the developer is at this time?
I mean, certainly we do have, there is a developer who has purchased the outstanding undeveloped portions of the property and would be responsible for any infrastructure going forward.
So have we had conversations with that developer?
Yes.
And have those conversations led to any conclusion of what we're needing to do? Is there a certain amount of homes that he wants to have up and going before he starts spending money on infrastructure? I mean, we're in extenuating circumstances here in that we've gone through a number of developers, at least one has gone bankrupt, and they're in a perpetual limbo. I mean, and they continue to drive on roads that, soon won't exist. It'll be a dirt road. And do we really want that from a city's perspective? Our citizens living in our neighborhoods driving on a dirt road. I mean, that's a real question. It's a moral question we need to ask ourselves. So, I mean, we need to find out what the responsibilities and what are the requirements of the developer and how we can move forward with this situation.
Mr. Hensley?
Yeah, in the planning commission meeting, I asked about when roads are constructed, the city periodically inspects the roads. So when it gets ready, so when you get down there at the end, they put the top coat on, we know what's down there underneath is correct. And the representative from the city said they had not looked for the records and they didn't know if there were any. I think that'd be the first place to start, is to look for the inspection records on the road and find out what's there before we ever do anything.
Mr. Hammond?
Just a quick curiosity question. How long have we been working on this? I know that they brought the concern. I'm just trying to get a feel for the timeline of the records request, the concerns, how it's come, and
Some of those citizen comments and questions began, if I recall, in February of this year. And that is the timeframe.
okay.
I mean, Lee, there has to be some inquiry or investigation as it relates to how and when, on whose authority, the bonds were allowed to lapse. Now, there's got to be some history of that somewhere. I mean, it predates all of us, I think, but somewhere there's got to be a record, and if there's not, then that leads to one conclusion. But I would just, and that's a thankless task, but we're gonna have to do it. We're just gonna have to do it. And how we go about that, I would defer to your judgment, but that I've just never heard of that happening. I mean, at least these circumstances as have been represented to us tonight. And I'm not directing criticism at anyone. I just want to be sure that we know exactly what happened and when, and then we can make a determination as to what we do next. Mr. Stotts, you got something else?
Yeah, I've just got a real quick follow-up. So I think from what I'm hearing, you've heard from several council members that we need to know where we are with this. Who owns it? Where did we lose it? But I think one of the things, concrete, we can do is, in the meantime, look at that, assess it, and how much it will cost to repair that area. To repair, and come back to council with that number, and then we can take it from there. And in the meantime, Mayor Gooch did mention we need to track this down and see where we are with it. I think he's exactly right on that. There's got to be a record somewhere with it.
Mr. Hammond?
Yep, just echoing where I am, and I absolutely agree. And I think that in terms of finding a way to make it work or figure it out and get it resolved, it should be indeed a top priority. I think we as a council have a moral obligation to take care of the citizens, given the safety, some of the dynamics, how they brought the issue to us. One, I'm grateful for everybody that brought it, but it was a demonstrated level of patience. Folks, we've seen people show up with issues and not come the way that they've come tonight. And so they've demonstrated some level of patience going through the documentation. And so given how they've approached it and how long this has been going on, I do think we have a moral obligation to figure out how to resolve this as soon as possible in whatever way is legally appropriate, but certainly getting it done.
Gentlemen, you've already, anyone else? All right. So come back. What? Oh, okay. Sorry, didn't see you.
Hey there. My name's Katie Ramba, 138 Groves Park Boulevard East. So I will say, kind of previously mentioned by David, is that the plat, when it was originally made, the city did sign off saying that the HOA would own the roads, but the city would maintain the alleyways. Sorry. The HOA would maintain the, HOA would own the alleyways, but the city would maintain them. So at least that part has a public record that the city has signed off on, saying that the city does own the alleyways to maintain that construction. And the alleyways are honestly probably the worst off. That's where we're driving on dirt. And the kind of drainage pipes are coming out, and people have popped tires on them, and it's been a pretty rough situation there. So there is at least that city record saying that the city is obligated to maintain the alleys.
All right, thank you. All right.
So real quick, just to clarify that last point, just to make sure I understand, that would be upon acceptance of those roadways, that those provisions would come into play? Okay, so we're kind of back on the original point. All right, so the point's valid, I hear you, right, it's just, I don't want to re-echo everything everybody else said, right, but we've got to figure out ownership and then get to that point where there's that acceptance process, and that acceptance process gets run. They'll take a look at it.
All right. Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
Yeah, I'd just like to interject that
Okay.
Mr. Culclasher's comment relates to a different process that we depend on that hasn't been working. So we have another one to pursue that, you know, is not as legally messed up, but still, if we think we're asking people to prevent erosion when they do construction, and we have massive mud flows off the site, we've got a problem. So we have that's another area where we have a process that needs to be reexamined.
Yeah.
Same theme, different context, different contexts.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. The next item is for elections and appointments. We need to elect one student representative to the Traffic Safety Advisory Board. That position has been vacant for some time, but thanks to Allison King at Oak Ridge High School, on the suggestion of Mr. Heeman, actually, we got in touch with them, and they put ads in their school iNews, and we got 3 applicants from getting in touch with them. So you've got Ajali Givens, Reagan Lukes, and Patrick Vodopovic, and you would vote for one. And in the memo, it also says, because it has been vacant for so long, that we would like to go ahead and have the person elected till June 30th of 2026. None of the applicants were seniors, so they would be eligible to serve until June of 2026.
Okay. Thank you.
You could just do the first names, maybe.
That works for part of them. Hammond votes for Givens. Smith votes for Givens. Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Hope votes for Reagan. Mayor Gooch votes for Reagan. Dotson votes for Givens. Mayor Pro Tem Dotson. Hensley abstains. Gleason votes for Givens.
Hey, Jolly Givens got 4 votes. Jolly Givens is elected.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Heeman. Oh, okay. Council requests for new business items. Are there any? Mr. Hensley.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment that I noticed a member of the Scarborough 85 committee back there. And I wanted to say that we're making real progress. We got a potential grant in the governor's budget of $3.2 million. We got $1.5 million from another grant potentially. And so we're making really good progress.
Mr. Hope.
Yeah, just real quick, I just want to let everybody know that I'll be traveling to Idaho Falls next week for my ECA responsibilities. Our new nuclear initiative forum is going on in Idaho Falls, 22nd through the 24th, and I'll be out there promoting Oak Ridge. We're open for business.
Mr. Dodson.
Yes, sir. I've got a request from a good friend. He asked me, when are our streets going to receive that coat of pavement, particularly between connections between like Rutgers and Illinois or Rutgers and the Turnpike? So when are we going to be able to count on that?
Soon. You know, the temperature has got to be, I guess the ground temperature, Tom, is it 55 degrees?
Well, it was 85 today.
But for a sustained period of time.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
need an answer.
I think you're asking about finishing Illinois Avenue.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, we talked to contractor about 10 days ago. TDOT has a stoppage of work during the holidays. Contractor has said they intend to start back the day after that stoppage, which is, I don't have a calendar in front of me, I think it's the 21st.
21st of this month? Okay.
That's what we were told, and the reference to the temperature is correct. TDOT's spec for the type of pavement they're putting down is 55 degrees and rising at night because this project requires paving at night.
Okay. Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
How about the connections on New York Avenue?
Sir?
The connections on New York Avenue to the side streets, that's a city street.
On New York Avenue?
Yeah, is that one complete? Because we've got a resident that complained to me.
On New York no, I'm confused because that's not in this project.
I know that. It's a
He's
city
asking about it
project.
separately.
It's a city, but my resident said that the connectors from the main part of New York Avenue to the side streets, they all weren't completed.
I don't know.
Between the existing pavement in the residential street and New York Avenue, there's gaps.
Is there a particular street, do you know? Do you have an address or anything?
If you want me to, I'll find out.
Okay, yeah, I don't know the answer to that. To my knowledge, it is finished.
Roger, I guarantee I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take you up on it.
That's good.
Ms. Smith?
Yeah, another one on streets. I've been hearing complaints from my neighbors who are concerned that the leaves were never cleaned, have not been cleaned off the street. The leaves were picked up off people's yards to some extent. It wasn't very clean, very thorough this year, but places where the street had leaves in it were not cleared. That includes places where there's nobody it includes vacant lots and so forth. But there's concern about the condition of the streets. Typically, we have a street sweeper come through sometime after the fall leaf pickup, and that hasn't happened this year. So I've been hearing complaints about that.
We will look at that and take care of it.
Okay. Mr. Heeman?
I said earlier to someone that was up here to read the room when things were rolling quickly, so I will try to roll very quickly through this since it's approaching the 10 o'clock hour. Okay? Just real quickly, spring internship program wraps up April 25th. We are going to be having interns for the summer. I've been working on that. Rowing season off to a very good start. Firefighter training going on this month as well. Okay. Also, don't forget April 15th. If you haven't gotten it by now, I'm sorry. You're probably going to be in trouble. You've got very little time left, unless you want an extension. Yeah. So you can see there also very important meetings related to the comprehensive plan. We've had fantastic input. When we reach a point where we've had enough input, we will bring the consultant back to discuss the first round of input, and that won't be too long from now. Utility operations and maintenance, working on New York Avenue with some of the older poles. Crews have been working to install conductor and poles at the Kairos facility, and electric department's meeting regularly with Rano and TVA to meet the needs of that program. In fact, I think we'll have a number on that substation pretty soon. Also, Scarborough Center has a community share day on April 25th and an Easter egg hunt out there on Saturday as well. Okay. We're still looking for lifeguards, and we have some classes in May. Summer camp registration is open, and the conference center ribbon cutting, please put this on your calendars, is May 7th at 1 p.m. Finally, we had a great egg hunt and the YAB's Art in the Park. I know some of you participated in that. Very well attended. Arbor Day was fantastic, as always, a great crowd and just a really good event. Appreciate everybody coming out to that. And you can see some other things going on there. I do want to point out that Mike Stallo is presenting Downtown Oak Ridge history from 1955 to 89 on Wednesday. Finishing up, we've got some new employees. You can see them there. Isabella in finance, Gavin in maintenance, Austin in parks, Amy, Pablo in parks as well. We've got a new library page, Colleen, and then Jordan Durham, environmental compliance inspector and public works department, just started. And we have a few promotions. You can see those: Cody Lowe in maintenance, Isar in public safety. Julie Lee, if you didn't know this, has been promoted to recreation manager 2. So the position for the conference center management is open. They've been interviewing for that. She had moved into that position and then moved up. George Wilson, police officer investigator, and Caitlin Bryson, public safety dispatch. And I believe that's all I had tonight.
All right. I assume the the city attorney has no further business tonight.
No, sir.
Thank you. All right. Okay. We are adjourned. We're going to hang on here for a second because the AKAs want to take a picture with council. So we're adjourned. Thank you all for your patience and your attendance. And sorority. Yeah, AKAs. Yeah. What?
Actually,